What's up, guys? Welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today we're in Mark chapter number 11.
All right.
Jump right in.
So whenever we started reading this, we just read it out loud in our living room. Mama read it to us, and we got to listen. And so one of the things, like the moment she read the title of the chapter is like basically it's Jesus's triumphant entry. Everybody just kind of looked up, and here's the deal. Because we're only in chapter number 11 and it's already the triumphant entry. Well, remember what we talked about what Mark does in this book, just kind of over and over. Mark's favorite word in this whole book is the word immediately. So he skips Jesus's birth. He skips the first 30 years of Jesus's life. And when he opens up chapter number 1, already in chapter 1, Jesus is being tempted. He's choosing his disciples. He's beginning his ministry. I mean, they're flying through. So here's what's going to happen. Mark takes the first 10 chapters and he flies through 3.5 years of Jesus's ministry. But in chapter number 11, Mark slams on the brakes, and he's going to be because the rest of the book from chapter 11 to chapter 16 is going to be about the last 7 days of Jesus's life. So you're going, how did we get here so fast? Well, now you're figuring out Mark is blazing through this in order to get to the most important week ever. Now, Jeb had some good thoughts about this. So Jeb, let's just throw it out there. What you got?
Okay, so what I liked about this chapter is, so in a few chapters before, when they had the Lord's Supper, or I don't know if it was during the Lord's Supper, but he told them, I'm going to die. And he still went into Jerusalem, even though he knew he was going to die. He didn't cower. He knew it had to be done to save the world from their sins.
That's right. One of the Gospels says that, obviously Jesus knew what was going to happen to him in Jerusalem. He had told the disciples over and over, we are going to the Jerusalem where the scribes and the Pharisees and the chief priests and the elders will arrest and crucify the Son of Man. And then he would rise from the dead on the third day. He was telling them this. So he knew he was going to Jerusalem to die. And it says this, that he set his face steadfast toward Jerusalem. Not away, not around, not anywhere else, but towards him. So when Jesus is headed into Jerusalem, the people began pulling down leaves off trees and branches and laying their clothes on the ground. And he's sending his disciples out like he's going to send them out for the Lord's Supper. He's sending them out with plans that he has made, that he has set up, that they just have to walk in faith, that there's going to be a donkey. They're going to let him basically take this donkey. I mean, imagine Jesus in modern times saying, hey guys, I want y'all to go this way, and there's going to be a nice car over there. I want you to steal that car and bring it here. And if anybody says, hey, what are you taking my car? Just say, oh, Jesus needs it, and they'll let you have it. Well, I mean, good grief. So they go get this donkey, and everything is set up like Jesus is putting all this into motion. But Jeb and I talked about how they treated Jesus. How did they treat Jesus in this moment?
They were praising him and waving palm branches while he was entering.
Okay. Well, yes.
But they also were gonna crucify him, and they were some people were judging him and being like, hey, that's not the Messiah, that's a fraud.
That's right. So Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a Sunday, and by Friday he's crucified. Mm-hmm. So the beginning of the week they're calling him the Messiah. When they say Hosanna, what that means is save us now. That's what that word means. Save us. They're crying out to him as a savior, and they're going to crucify him on Friday. So it's a big deal about what a big difference that a week can make in a life. Things can turn around very quickly. But we notice that they treated Jesus the way that he really deserved. Talk to us about that. Who is Jesus and how were they treating him?
Jesus is our God, and he's supposed to be treated with respect because he literally made the earth. And so without him, they wouldn't be there. They wouldn't be where he is.
That's right. So at the beginning of the week, they're treating him the way God ought to be treated. At the end of the week, they're treating him the way the sacrificial lamb is treated. Murdered and killed and his blood shed and poured out. So he is being treated like when we start this chapter out, we're going, yeah, you finally got it. Y'all are finally seeing. You're like the blind man whose eyes were open in stage. You finally got it. And then they didn't. And we kind of see ourselves in that. But here's my takeaway. My takeaway comes from this really weird story where Jesus is hungry and he goes over to a fig tree and he's like, I'm looking for some figs. But it wasn't the time for figs yet. And so remember, time is important here, right? And so it wasn't time for figs. Well, Jesus goes and he goes, it's like he's grumpy. And he's like, you stinking fig tree, may you never produce fruit. And they see it later, and it just shrivels up to nothing. And you got to wonder, why was Jesus so grumpy? Is Jesus a grumpy Gus? No. So the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. That's not just the fruit of the Spirit. That's Jesus's fruit, right? And so he is joyful. But here's what's happening. Because you got to remember, where does Jesus go when he goes into Jerusalem? He goes to the temple. And what are they doing there? The temple is busy and it's full and it's active and it's everybody's doing everything. And then Jesus kind of goes back out to Bethany for the night. He comes back in the next day and he's ready to flip over the tables. And he is, and you go, why is Jesus so angry? All right, keep all of that in mind when you read this story about this fig tree. Because what did it say about the fig tree? It said that it had leaves everywhere but no fruit. So it looked like it was in the prime of its life. It looked like it was living and everything was great. But what has Jesus been teaching his disciples all the way through? He's taught them about the parable of the soils, how things grow and they shoot out leaves and all this. But how do you measure it? Not by its growth, but by its fruit. And now you're at the end of the story. And now you got a tree that looks living, but it doesn't have any what?
Fruit.
All right. And then Jesus goes into the temple. And it's busy and people are everywhere and it looks religious and it looks living. But what is Jesus going to say? It's got no
fruit.
And when Jesus looks at it and says, may you never bear fruit again, and the tree withers, what do we know about the temple? We know that in the temple, about 40 years after Jesus says this, the temple is going to be completely destroyed. Why? Because even though it looked like it was full of life, it didn't have any
fruit.
Right. And so when Jesus is grumpy, maybe he's not really grumpy about the tree. Maybe he's grumpy about the hard-heartedness of his people. And he's hurt over the fact that after all they've seen and all that he's offered them since the beginning, they're still not bearing fruit. That's what's going on with the tree. The tree then becomes for us, I said this at church yesterday about the blind man, becomes almost like a living, breathing, if trees breathe, and they do, okay, a living, breathing parable. It was a real tree. But underneath the meaning of that tree, Jesus is trying to tell them, look, you can look like you got life, but if you're not bearing fruit, something's wrong. That's what this is about. So we'll see you tomorrow in chapter number 12. Keep reading and keep enjoying. Bye.
Bye.